It is 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. The house is quiet. No one is slamming a door down the hall. No one is calling his name. The fishing channel is playing in the background. Not really watching it, just running. He is in his 50s, sitting with all of it. Maybe that is your friend. Maybe that is you. Gen X was the first generation of kids who came home to an empty house and just handled it. Nobody asked if they were okay. Nobody really thought to. And 40 years later, a lot of those same men are in a house that is quiet again. And they are handling it the same way they always did. But here is what everyone misses. This is not dysfunction. This is not failure. This is Machiavelli's Fortress Doctrine playing out exactly as he described it. And once you understand this principle, you stop seeing isolation, and you start seeing strategic sovereignty. The Fortress Doctrine. Machiavelli wrote extensively about princes and their fortresses. And he understood something that most people completely miss. A prince does not retreat to his fortress because he has failed. He retreats to his fortress because he has calculated the cost of remaining in court. And he has determined that the fortress provides more security, more peace, and more control than the court ever could. And this is exactly what the Gen X man has done. He has not failed at connection. He has executed a strategic withdrawal from costly alliances. And he has fortified his own territory instead. Society calls this loneliness. Machiavelli would call this sovereignty. Because here is what the data actually shows. About 2 out of 3 single men in midlife in the US live alone. Back in 1970, only 7% of midlife adults had never been married. By 2020, that was close to 30%. 1 in 3 men in midlife has never walked down the aisle. That is not a subculture. That is a structural shift. And it is happening for a reason. These men watched their parents' generation. They watched 50% of marriages collapse. They watched their fathers lose half their assets, lose access to their children, lose their homes. They collected the data, and they made a strategic calculation. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince observes not what men promise, but what men consistently deliver. And Gen X men observed what marriage consistently delivered to the generation before them. Betrayal, financial ruin, emotional devastation. And they made a choice, not out of fear, but out of calculated self-preservation. The Latchkey Prince. Here is where this generation's story becomes even more Machiavellian. Gen X men were the latchkey kids, the first real wave of them. They came home to empty houses, let themselves in, made their own food, figured out their own problems. Research from the early 2000s described Gen X as one of the least parented generations in American history. And while that sounds harsh, Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. These were princes raised to govern themselves. Studies on independence development suggest that reduced adult supervision, when it happens early enough, accelerates certain skills. Problem solving, tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to sit in a quiet room without needing to immediately fill it with noise or people. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who learns to govern himself early becomes the prince who needs no court. And Gen X men were trained in self-governance from the age of 10. So when a 54-year-old Gen X man says he likes living alone, he is not performing contentment. He is reporting a skill he has had since childhood. The quiet does not unsettle him. He learned to sit in it decades ago in a house where nobody was home. But here is where it gets more complex. When emotional self-sufficiency gets trained into you early enough, it stops feeling like a skill and starts feeling like a personality. And then you stop being able to tell the difference between not needing people and having just gotten very good at convincing yourself you do not. That distinction matters. Because one is strategic independence, the other is strategic isolation. And Machiavelli understood that even princes need alliances, just not costly ones. The three paths to the fortress. The road that leads to this life is not the same for everyone. There are three distinct paths. And understanding which path you took determines whether you are in a fortress or in exile. Path 1. The never married prince. The first path is the man who never married. It was not a protest. It was not a wound. It just kind of happened. He was in his 20s, building something, a career, a life that made sense to him. And the partnership kept getting pushed to the next chapter. He had relationships, some of them long ones, but they never tipped over into permanent. And the longer you live alone, the more your whole life shapes itself around one person. The apartment, the habits, the schedule, the way you like your coffee. All of it calibrated to exactly you. You get so good at it that restructuring everything around someone else starts to feel like a disruption rather than an upgrade. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. This is the prince who has optimized his kingdom for single-ruler governance. And introducing a co-ruler would require dismantling everything he has built. This man is not in exile. He is in his fortress. By design. Path 2. The divorced prince. Then there is the man who was married, and it ended. This is a genuinely different experience. And the research on this group is sobering. Studies have found that unmarried men between 40 and 60 are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide compared to married men in the same range. Divorced men specifically come in at 8 times the rate of divorced women. 8 times. And the reason researchers keep landing on is not weakness, it is structural. A lot of men built their entire social world around their marriage without realizing that is what they were doing. She was the one keeping the friendships going. She remembered birthdays, planned the dinners, maintained the connections. When the marriage ends, it is not just the relationship that collapses. It is the whole social infrastructure it was holding up. Machiavelli wrote about princes who lose their kingdoms not because they were weak, but because they built their power on someone else's foundation. And when that foundation was removed, everything collapsed. This man is not in his fortress, he is in exile, forced isolation. And exile is the most dangerous position a prince can occupy, because he has lost his kingdom but has not yet built a new one. Path 3, the widowed prince, and then there is a third type that does not come up much. The widower. Men who had the life, the relationship, the whole structure, and then lost it not to a court date but to something they never saw coming. These men are in a different kind of alone. The house still has 2 of everything. They are not learning to live alone from scratch. They are learning to live alone in a space that used to mean something else entirely. Machiavelli wrote about princes who lose their kingdoms to forces beyond their control. And he observed that these princes face the hardest rebuilding process. Because there is no anger to process, just absence. And absence is harder to strategize against than betrayal. The daily sovereignty. So what does an actual day look like for this man? Because the version people imagine and the version that exists are usually pretty different. He is up early. Not because someone is making noise, but because that is when his brain works. Coffee is the same every day, exactly the way he wants it. If he is still working, he goes. If not, there is always something. A project. A YouTube rabbit hole about old motorcycles or woodworking he will go 3 hours deep into and not apologize for. Dinner whenever he wants. Could be 5, could be 9. entirely his call. And there is a quiet satisfaction in that, which is hard to explain to someone who has not lived it. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who controls his own schedule controls his own life. And this man controls every minute of his day. No negotiation, no compromise, no one else's needs factoring into his decisions. This is not loneliness. This is sovereignty. But sovereignty comes with a cost. And Machiavelli understood this cost better than anyone. The cost of the fortress. Here is where the data gets specific. A 2026 study on Gen X men and friendship found that 95% of men said friends are essential to a happy and healthy life. 95%. So it is not that they do not care. They absolutely do. But caring about something and being equipped to maintain it are two different things entirely. Men in the study were less likely than women to volunteer, attend any kind of regular gathering, or belong to a local organization. Only about 1 in 5 men belongs to any kind of local group. And researchers described men's friendships as high passion, low vulnerability. They will talk about sports, politics, music, whatever happened in the news for hours. But they will not say, "I have been off lately. I have not really talked to anyone in a while. I am not doing great." That part does not come out. Not because they do not feel it, but because the wiring for saying it out loud was never really installed. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who appears strong must never reveal weakness, because the moment weakness is revealed, enemies strike. And Gen X men have internalized this principle so deeply that they cannot turn it off, even when there are no enemies, even when vulnerability would strengthen the alliance rather than weaken it. And so the friendships fade, not because they ended, but because nobody knows how to maintain them. Men connect shoulder to shoulder. They do things together, fish, work on something, sit at a game. The conversation happens around the activity. But when you live alone at 55 and your shoulder-to-shoulder buddy is 3 time zones away, the connection fades into a group chat nobody reads. And since these friendships do not officially end, no conflict, no falling out, both men just assume it is still there. Inactive. Like a tool in the garage. It exists. It is just not in use. And the longer it sits, the more restarting feels like it needs a reason or occasion. So they wait, and years go by without one. About 60% of Gen X adults qualify as lonely, higher than boomers. These are people who from the outside look completely fine. Jobs, routines, homes, cars. The loneliness does not announce itself. It looks like a guy who is always busy, always handling something, never needs anything from anybody. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. This is the prince whose fortress has become so well defended that nobody can get in, not even allies. The fortress economy. Here is something that actually gets missed. Living alone in your 50s, when you have been doing it for a while, comes with genuinely good things. Not as a spin on the negatives, but actually good things worth naming. There is a stability to a life you built yourself entirely. Every routine was chosen, not negotiated. He eats what he wants, sleeps how he wants, spends his money on what matters to him. On a Saturday afternoon, when everything is in its place, the weather is right. There is nowhere to be, and nothing he owes anybody. On those days, the life he has is exactly the life he would choose. He is not performing contentment. He has it. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who controls his own resources controls his own destiny. And this man controls every resource he has. Time, money, attention, energy, all self-allocated. No one can drain them without his permission. And here is the part the data shows that people do not expect. Loneliness goes down as people get older. Adults in their late 40s and 50s report the highest rates. Nearly half say they feel lonely in that window. But the number drops steadily into their 60s and 70s. The Gen X man struggling at 53 often feels different at 65. Something shifts. People get more comfortable in their own skin. The noise about what their life was supposed to look like gets quieter. Machiavelli observed that older princes become wiser princes, not because they gain more territory, but because they stop needing to prove anything. And in that shift, they find a different kind of peace. The drift. But there is a real risk in this kind of life that does not get enough attention. And it is not the loneliness people usually point to. It is the drift. The drift is what happens when there is no external structure and no one to reflect your life back at you. It does not arrive all at once. It happens the way most things go wrong. Gradually, quietly, in ways that feel completely normal while they are happening. You skip the gym one day. Then it becomes a week. Meals get simpler. Then careless. Sleep shifts a little. Then a lot. And because there is no one there to say, hey, this is not like you, nothing ever feels wrong. Your normal just moves. Machiavelli warned that the prince without advisors becomes the prince without perspective. And a fully self-managed life can feel stable, even when it is slowly narrowing. There is no signal, no alert. Just a man who looks at his routine one day and realizes, without any drama, that it has gotten a lot smaller than he intended. Not because something broke, because nothing stopped it from getting smaller. The anchors. So here is what the research is actually showing works. Small, regular contact beats big, occasional contact every time. A short text once a week does more than one long phone call every 6 months. The men who seem to age best in solo living are not the ones who overhaul their whole social life. They are the ones who build in a few low-effort anchors. One consistent person, one routine that gets them outside the house. One thing that happens whether they feel like it or not. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince maintains alliances not through grand gestures, but through consistent, small interactions. And this principle applies here perfectly. One study highlighted a group of men who started something they called Wednesday Waffle. Each guy would record a 2-minute video. No script, no topic, just whatever was on his mind, and drop it in a group chat every Wednesday. That was the whole thing. No scheduling, no coordinating, no pressure to be interesting. Just 2 minutes of being present in each other's lives once a week. And it worked. Not because it was profound, but because it was frictionless enough that they actually kept doing it. The real picture. So what is the real picture here? He is not broken, not waiting, not secretly miserable behind a well-maintained routine. He built something, and a lot of the time it works well. He can sit by himself in a way most people cannot. He runs on internal fuel, and it runs pretty clean. But there are the other days, sitting in a waiting room with nobody to text on the way over. A holiday that passes without a real conversation. That moment right before sleep when the house makes a noise and there is nobody to exchange a look with. Those days do not cancel the good ones, but they are real. The gap between being alone and feeling alone, that is where the real psychology of this man lives. He has been practicing not needing for so long, he often cannot tell which side of that gap he is on. Machiavelli wrote that the strongest fortress is the one whose commander knows when to open the gates. Not because the fortress is weak, but because even the strongest prince needs allies, just not costly ones. And if you are the man watching this right now in a quiet house on a weeknight, Call that friend you have not talked to in 3 years. Not because something is wrong, not because you need anything from him, just because 3 years is too long. And the guy on the other end of that call is probably sitting in a quiet house too, in his own routine, waiting for a reason that never quite shows up. One call, something frictionless enough that you actually do it, because the line is not dead. It has just been sitting in the garage. Someone just has to pick it up. And Machiavelli would tell you that the prince who maintains his alliances, even the quiet ones, is the prince who survives. Not just in his fortress, but in his life.